This is going to sound like so much hate, and I swear it's not. Welcome back to the Warner Brothas Podcast. I'm Kyle, joined as usual during football season by Tim Gray. Tim, how you doing?
Really well. We had some interesting football this weekend.
Boy, did we.
Ready to talk.
Boy, did we. Yes, it is the Monday after the divisional round weekend. Also Martin Luther King Day. Also Inauguration Day. It's been a crazy day to be an American in general, but as Tim knows from our pre-podcast banter, it's been a particularly crazy day up here. Pretty crazy day for me in general. But Tim, Bills Ravens, should we get right to it?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
I'm interested. I don't know if you bet on this game. I know you had the Ravens obviously getting to the Super Bowl, losing to the Lions who we'll talk about very soon, obviously. But I think you kind of had this game pigeonholed like me. I thought that, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, that running combo, I thought it'd be too much for the Bills to deal with. But here we are, 21-10 at the half. Bills are up. What are your thoughts coming out of the first half, going into the second half? Mind you, with the Bills receiving the second half kickoff. What are you thinking at that moment coming out of halftime?
I was definitely a little shocked. I definitely didn't think that we'd even get into that scenario. If anything, I thought it would be the other way around. 21-10, Ravens up, looking dominant. Going into the second half, I was like, Keenan texted, and I totally agree. We're about to find out who Lamar is. Is he a playoff QB that can win you a Super Bowl? I think Lamar pretty much did everything he needed to in the second half. Brought him right down there to get the 2-point conversion. We had some other bad play, and Lamar gets a little bit of this blame. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
He made some mistakes in this, so it can't all go on Lamar's shoulder. That's why I hate it when people say wins are a QB stat, because Lamar might have been a cog in the machine of why they lost, but he definitely is not the biggest one in this scenario. So I don't think I ever lost confidence in them being down 11 points at half. I thought that they would be capable of coming back and winning, and it would have taken good defense, which they got. Only allowing 6 second half points is pretty damn good against a team like the Bills. So I'm shocked at how it ended. Really wanted to see overtime. Really wanted to see a fun game, and we should have gotten it. But it really sucks.
Yes. We really made it all the way here somehow without saying the name itself, Mark Andrews. I echo your exact statements though. 21-10. I'm not in love with it. Just a little background. I'd pick the Ravens to not only go to the Super Bowl, but win the Super Bowl, not only in our playoff preview, but in the preseason. And I'll say it right here, Lamar and Derrick Henry, they're two of my favorite players in the league. It wasn't like that though. I genuinely thought this team is loaded with talent. They're coming back. They're fueled off that loss in the AFC Championship game where they did not give their best effort. And you're giving them, in my opinion, a top 2 back, right? It's him and Saquon, whatever order you want to put him, to me. Obviously McCaffrey too, but if you're just talking, I'm handing it off. And, after that, it's him in the offensive line. Those are the 2 backs I want, is Saquon and Derrick Henry, right? So I loved their team from the beginning. Coming out of the second half, 21-10, obviously you got the 2 turnovers from Lamar. Both kickers, by the way, Tyler Bass and Justin Tucker, both of them showed up. It is hard to kick in cold weather. The only thing I would imagine that football almost feels like a basketball when you're kicking it from 40-plus yards, 50 yards in cold weather. You know what I mean? It must just feel heavy underfoot. So coming out with 21-10, I'm like, man, it's not ideal, but look, they need to stop here. Otherwise, it's over. If they let the Bills get 7, that's going to be intensely hard comeback for them, right? And obviously they get a 3-and-out. And then after that, man, it really seemed like the Ravens were in complete control of the game. I felt extremely confident, especially after the Derrick Henry score. Didn't love that they didn't give it to him on that 2-point conversion, the first one. I thought, they had ran down their throats the entire time, looked much like the Steelers game. Thought they would have gave it to him there. And honestly, they had Isaiah Likely wide open. I think it was Milano there who made a great play on the ball, tipped it. Tip your cap, right? I personally probably would have handed it off there, but really, I mean, you got an open guy. They made a play. What can you do, right? And then obviously the two key plays there in the second half, as we've alluded to, the Mark Andrews fumble, where it just seems like he's trying to do too much, right? Lamar, I mean, I completely agree with you, man. Like you mentioned after we recorded how you want to come on an NBA pod. You want to give an outsider's view of an NBA fan, like as a casual NBA fan, like an NFL fan's view of the NBA. And I'll give you two players right now who are like earned the reputation of a postseason choker, and that's James Harden and that's Joel Embiid. And you've probably saw this online. There was a lot of people photoshopping Lamar's face onto Joel Embiid or Joel Embiid's face onto a Lamar Jackson. And that's, like you said, that's completely not warranted. Lamar did his job in the second half. In fact, when he threw that first terrible interception, they ended up getting a 3-and-out after. So you're almost negated after that, right? The fumble was terrible, absolutely terrible, and that led to 7. But man, second half, Lamar did everything he could. If there was a nitpick, maybe he should have scrambled more, but he was doing it from the pocket. Even on that play with the initial fumble to Mark Andrews, that was probably 24, 30-yard pickup with Mark Andrews trying to make a play. They force a fumble. Ravens defense does their job, holding them to a field goal on a 4th and 2. What did you think about that whole situation with them having it inside the 5, inside the 2? The Bills, they got 3rd and 4th down. They get stopped on 3rd down. Almost looks like Josh Allen's trying to pitch it back. What did you think about that playing call? Did you like that they went for the field goal? Would you rather have seen the Bills go for it on 4th down with Josh Allen? How did you feel about that?
I mean, it would have been great to see a 4th down attempt, and it really would have put the game away at that point. That would have been out of reach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, inevitably, it was the right call to go for the field goal, right? Take the points, make it a 2-score, and just ride it out, or whatever the score differential was there at that point. But
made it 8 points, yeah.
8 points, yep. It would have been the dagger, and that would have been like classic Bills. Like we saw that against the Chiefs. They were up, and they decided to go for it, when they could have taken an easy field goal and put them up. I guess I agree with the field goal. Just take it, make it a 2-score game, put it all on their shoulders versus, risking it. Because in that drive, they looked okay, but that whole second half, 6 points, like they weren't moving the ball like they were in the first half. They weren't getting nearly as much defensive presence in the second half. So I agree with just taking your points because it is 2 yards, but it's a tough 2 yards against Baltimore.
Sure. I mean, I'm honestly shocked. I'm still kind of shocked, and at the moment, I was shocked that they did not go for it on that 4th and what was basically 1.5, 2. I think anytime you have someone like Josh Allen or Cam Newton at your QB position or Anthony Richardson, anybody who's like a force like that, where it's going to take more than one person to bring them down, I'm shocked they didn't try to step on their throats. Ultimately, it was smart because, hey, I mean, you run the risk of completely losing the game if you don't pick it up there. Make them score 8 instead of 7. That's tough enough. Again, proved to be right because it turned out to be way tougher than it needed to be, apparently. But, man, I was super impressed with Lamar in that second half. I know some people might not want to hear it, and some people want to give him that label, especially if you're judging it off the first 2 turnovers. But I thought he outplayed Josh Allen. I thought the Bills played not to lose in the second half, which was crazy to me. I thought they were in prime position to really step on their throats. They were giving the Ravens defense problems. And man, seemed like they were just, running screens, running it with James Cook. And if he'd only get a couple yards, okay, let's go back to this generic play call. Let's not run Josh Allen out of the pocket. It just seemed like they were completely just trying not to turn the ball over and daring the Ravens to do what they do. And by the way, the Ravens they were being completely successful. Before the Andrews fumble, they had 3 straight scoring drives. And then obviously after the fumble, they score on that, what would be the 4th and 5th drive. 4 out of 5 drives, I should say. And then ultimately it came down to that 2-point conversion, which, I'd love to do like a segment on it, but we really can't. It was literally as simple as he was wide open. Lamar, you can say Lamar didn't make a perfect throw, right? Maybe Lamar could have, I don't know, put it a little higher to where he just reels it in. Maybe it was a little low, but I mean, at the end of the day, you got to catch that. That's you're wide open. You're right on the goal
Travis
line.
Kelce catches that.
Travis Kelce catches that. I think Isaiah Likely catches that. I really don't think the Ravens. I don't want to hear anything about Zay Flowers either. About if we had Zay Flowers today, we win, because it really came down to the turnovers. It really came down to the Ravens turning the ball over 3 times. Again, I said I don't want to give too much flack to Lamar for that because it didn't really end up killing him. But ultimately it does if the Bills don't have any turnovers, right? Then you're not even in that position for Mark Andrews. So, it kind of goes both ways. But, man, that felt like an AFC Championship game. The pressure was thick in that building. And, I got to know, what are your feelings now on the Bills going to Arrowhead? Do you feel any better or worse? Because I kind of know where all 3 of us are going to be leaning when we do these picks later on in the week. I feel like at least 2 of us out of the 3, whether that's you and Keenan, whoever, I feel like damn near all 3 of us are going to be leaning Bills. Do you feel any better or worse though after yesterday's game about Buffalo going to KC?
I definitely feel better right now.
Really?
I think it's a give and take, because one of the main reasons why I picked the Ravens to kind of dominate this, we've said it time and time again, they're a more talented roster.
Sure.
But when these 2 teams played earlier in the seasons, it went how we were kind of projecting it to go. The Ravens dominated. Their defense played well. Lamar he threw like 18 times in that game, but they ran for like 300 yards. That's kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting Baltimore to come in here and kind of just run this ball and control it. And I wanted to see a little bit more of that in the second half. Obviously, with a time constraint, you can't really run it on every down. But when they did run it with Derek, he was rolling. So I don't know why they really, really stopped on it. But the Bills surprised me because I didn't think that they would be able to hang into this game. So that's where I'm a little bit more confident, is they came up and they showed up right where they need to against a juggernaut like the Ravens. But the take is they played really conservative in the second half, and you can't play conservative against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs will go down and score that 2-point conversion and put you into overtime, and then you might not get a chance. So I think I am a little bit more confident. I still think it's really close. Like, I could definitely see myself picking the Chiefs right now. But I think I am a little bit more confident.
So we're going to talk here in a bit about Lions Commanders. And it's one of those things where, like, we knew the Lions defense was injured. We all knew that. And we still were kind of all rolling with the Lions. I think all of America was rolling with the Lions because it's like, yeah, we've seen them still put up points. We've seen them still produce on defense to some degree, at least get some stops, right? Even if they are allowing a lot of points, they're getting stops when they need to, right? That's kind of how I felt about Buffalo, especially in the second half. Once the defense getting injured and once they started getting conservative, it's like, okay, now it feels like the Ravens' talent really is taking over. Like, feels like the key point, kind of like you mentioned, the talent is going to take over. Now we're going to go with the Chiefs, who are less talented than they've ever been, right? Especially these last 2 iterations. With the Bills team who's maybe not super talented on offense and now banged up on defense as we go into this AFC Championship game, but at least more explosive than the Chiefs. I think that's still fair to say. So I honestly felt like whoever won yesterday's game, like if you would ask me Thursday, I would have said, yes, whoever wins this game, Bills or Ravens, is going to the Super Bowl. Like, I feel that confident about them. I feel, because I'm figuring it's either going to be a defensive battle game, field goal game, or it's going to be a high scoring game. And whatever team earns it, earns it. Went a little differently. This game had its seesaws. And just how conservative the Bills were, I don't know if that was weather related or what it was, that gave me a little concern. That gave me a little more concern than usual going into this weekend. But this much I know. The Bills aren't going to be afraid. Josh Allen's certainly not going to be afraid. And whatever we didn't see from Josh Allen as far as using his legs, honestly, in both games, it's not like he's rushed a lot in these first 2 games. You would think it's going to be all out there on Sunday, right? Like, I don't want to say he's got to play the game of his life, but he's got to do something close to like Vince Young, Texas versus USC type of joint. You know what I mean? Like, he's kind of got to put the team on his shoulders. He's got to kind of at least run the ball more here. I think, I don't know what he ended with rushing yards yesterday, but I think it was between 15 and 25, right? I don't think it was a ton of yardage there. So certainly less than 40. Um, so yeah, I think it's more of a coin flip, but also spoiler alert here. I think I'm going to roll with the Bills when it comes to us doing picks later in the week, but I definitely got more concerned than I did Thursday, Friday, or Saturday leading into this game. Any more thoughts on Ravens Chiefs? Is there any outlook for the Ravens going into the offseason?
I got two.
Okay.
Well, I guess I got three technically. So
Okay.
I think Mark Andrews played a bigger role than people actually think he did. Like, people just remember him for the fumble and for the missed 2-point conversion. The play before Lamar fumbled was 1st and 10.
Mm-hmm.
He had an easy routine catch that he makes 99% of the time. Would have been an 8-yard gain. Might have even gotten them the first down. Doesn't catch it. He drops it. Goes down as a drop. And then the next play, they're in 2nd and 10. So now Lamar's in the scenario where he has to throw the ball, and that's where he starts scrambling and fumbles and everything. If he just makes that catch, it's a different play call on the next play. It's, here you go, Derrick Henry. Run this in for 3 yards, get us first down, and we move on.
Mm-hmm.
So if he just makes that catch, potentially the Lamar fumble is wiped away, and they roll down and maybe score a field goal, and then it's a completely different game. And then obviously the other two things, like you said, doing too much on his fumble. He had the first. It was a big gain. Even if he jukes this guy, there's 2 other people on the other side of the field there that are going to chase you down for maybe 1 or 2 more yards. So just go down, take the first. That's what Kelsey would have done.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna loop it back to Kelsey, I feel, because he's just like the gold standard.
Sure.
He's got the first down. That's exactly what we needed. We don't need extra. Go down.
Especially in a cold weather game like that.
Exactly. There's no need to. You could just slip and fumble, like we saw that in the Rams Eagles game.
Sure.
Slipping all over the place, balls going all over the place. So I think a little bit more than just a fumble and a missed 2-point conversion are on Mark Andrews' shoulders here. I think this game kind of came down to it. With him, he's in kind of a bad cap space. Next year, they have to pay him like $16 million to stay on the team. So they might either need to restructure that or look into maybe they cut him. Like, sometimes that happens. A talented player gets cut just because he's too expensive. So I think that'll be an interesting thing for him. And then the final thing is they got to get a better 2-point conversion play, man. You got Derrick Henry in the backfield, and you got Lamar Jackson who can scramble for a yard and then just reach forward for the 2. Like, you're telling me you have to throw it there? I saw a post on Instagram. That's the 3rd time that they've run that exact same play as a 2-point conversion to win the football game. Lamar rolls out to the right and throws it right to the pylon to Mark Andrews. That's like their bread and butter. It didn't work in any of them.
That's interesting.
So the fact that you don't believe that you can get 2 yards with 2 of the most versatile runners in the sport of football blows my mind. So I think they gotta get back to the roots on that and just, here you go, Derek. Literally run through somebody, because you can and you will.
For sure.
But instead, like you said earlier, they should have given it to him on the first 2-point conversion.
I think, I think the first one specifically, again, it was a lot like the Steelers game where they just completely dominated the Bills' defensive line. That was going to be a mismatch anyway. The Ravens' offensive line, just in general, when they run 2 tight ends and you got Derrick Henry back there with a fullback, with or without a fullback, they are just so much bigger than the Bills. And we saw it specifically on that first scoring drive in the 3rd quarter, just how much of a mismatch that was. So on that specific one, that first 2-point conversion, absolutely, I'm handing it to Derrick Henry. That second one, I can't really have any complaints about it. A couple reasons. A, again, Andrews is wide open. B, we see Andy Reid and the Chiefs run that all the time on a 3rd and 4th and short, just getting everybody in space. It's just such a threat. When you got a running quarterback, mobile quarterback, it's such a threat that it just puts you on your heels. And again, it seemed to work up until it hit Mark Andrews' hands. And then the last thing I want to say, I'd forgotten about this. This must have been, God, when did Big Ben retire? 3-4 years ago?
I believe he played the 2020 season.
That's right.
And then that was it.
That's right. So this must have been his last season, and I had forgotten about this game, but it was a clip of a 2-point conversion, Ravens at Steelers, I believe, or vice versa, whichever, but it was a key game. Must have been they were pretty close in the division. I think they run a play action, and Lamar throws a little pretty easy pass to Mark Andrews that he had to extend for one hand, but it's one that again, most tight ends I think would corral, and he dropped it. A very similar play, not as cut and dry as this one, whereas if he just catches it, he definitely gets in. But a pretty standard, especially for Mark Andrews, a top tier tight end. I think we would all say. Just didn't corral it. It was interesting foreshadowing because I'd completely forgotten about that play, but it was very similar. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see if he's back on the team next year. Tight ends are weirdly replaceable. Tight ends do age well, so he has that going for him. I think next year will be his age 30 season, but I don't know. I think ultimately, so long as they stay healthy, I think the Ravens are going to be okay. I mean, the 17-game season's always scary when you got a back like Derrick Henry, but they seem to manage him very well this year. They kind of seem to lean on him early and then middle of the season kind of give him a break, but I don't know. I think they'll be back. I think they'll be heard from, and it's crazy because I think the best team in the AFC is at home currently. I really do. I feel like that was the best team suited for the Super Bowl. And then segue here, I think the best team in the NFC is at home. Tim, let me hear your thoughts just on this game as a whole, because whereas this game's the Ravens and the Bills, that centered between the second and fourth quarter, this game was just chaotic all the way through. So I want to hear your thoughts on this entire game, Lions and Commanders.
I start watching this game, of course, and I watch the Lions go down and score a touchdown, right? And then we see a field goal, and I'm like, from Washington scores a field goal. So it's 7-3, and the Lions get the ball back, and I was like, okay, that's how this game is going to go.
Just saw your message, Lions, by the way. The thing.
It's so good. I'm like, all right, that's how this game's going to go. We're going to get a lot of offense from the Lions. They're going to score their touchdowns. The Commanders, whenever they get there, they might get a touchdown here and there, but it's going to be some field goals. I literally went in and placed a bet, Lions minus 14.5. From that point on, chaos happened. Just downhill. Everything goes wrong that needs to go wrong. The Commanders capitalized on every single turnover. They got points. Their defense actually came to play, forcing turnovers, not just like bad throws. The Lions, they kind of beat themselves up. I put a lot of this on the defense. The offense didn't look amazing, obviously turning the ball over 4+ times or whatever, but defensively, they lost players right off the bat. I can't think of his name right now. Amik Robertson breaks his arm like 2 minutes into the game, so he's gone. Brian Branch was on and off the field throughout the second half. And then it's just it all got out of hand to where they just couldn't do anything. And we'd kind of seen the Lions deal with these injuries all year, and I just feel like it finally caught up to them where, they weren't deep enough to be, 13 guys on IR deep. So it was really tough, but it was amazing to watch if you're a Commanders fan. So I was blown away that from that first field goal, from that point on, the Lions were just the Commanders were just electric. They could just move the ball. And it was broken plays that you don't expect from the Lions, like the Scary Terry touchdown. That's a bubble screen. You're supposed to tackle him for a 2-yard gain. That's not supposed to be a breakaway touchdown the way it was. So I was blown away. Hopefully we get a similar output from their offense next week when it matters most. Usually that doesn't happen with rookie QBs playing in championship games. But I do have a cool stat.
Yeah.
Let me pull this up real quick.
Let's hear it.
So currently only 6 rookies have ever made a championship game before. Brock Purdy, Mark Sanchez, Joe Flacco, Ben Roethlisberger, Sean King, and now Jaden Daniels.
Sean King, yes.
Yeah. Throwback.
Yeah.
We got their defenses ranked in these starts.
All great.
Brock Purdy had the number 1. Mark Sanchez had the number 3. Joe Flacco the number 3. Ben Roethlisberger the number 1, and Sean King the number 3.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels has the 18th best defense in the league. And they came to play. Don't get me wrong. This was not all Jaden Daniels, the reason why they won this football game. Their defense got after it. They got turnovers. They scored points. The missed roughing the passer, I guess it's unsportsmanlike penalty. I don't personally love that rule to where if your quarterback throws an interception, he's now defenseless. Why is he defenseless? he's trying to get in there and make a tackle the same way. Like, you should be able to block him. Just because he's a QB, he's not exempt from being blocked hard or anything like that. So I don't love that. Sure, it was a hit clean to the head, and that should have been called. And from that point on, we didn't see like amazing play from Jared Goff, but they did end up scoring 2 touchdowns after that. So it's not like that's the reason why. But
Right.
I'll let you get your words in, because I feel like I could just talk forever about this.
No, for real. It was an entertaining game. To go off what you just said about that specific play, off the pick six with Jared Goff, I was not familiar with that rule that they're defenseless. Like, it seems like maybe we haven't seen defenses or offenses in this, or no, it would be defenses. Maybe we haven't seen defenses take the liberty of popping the quarterback, but I literally can't think of any time that's been called. But of course, when it did happen, the first place my mind went to, and this is unfortunate, and of course we will talk about this, was what if that was Patrick Mahomes? That's the only thing I could think, because he didn't just get blocked well, he got fucking popped, right? And he was let's be real here, was most likely concussed. Matter of fact, I don't know if you saw Jalen Hurts. Did you see his interview yesterday after the game?
I saw a post. I didn't get to like hear it, but it was like Jalen Hurts definitely popped a perk mid-game. Like, there's no way that this is sober.
He was definitely perked up. I will send it to you. It was it might even be the highlight of the weekend, aside from these games. Honestly, it was comp for sure. But needless to say, man, if that was Tua who got a concussion, like, he's just coming back in these games. That's just how it works. Like, there's not regular season rules when it comes to concussions. I firmly believe Jared Goff was concussed. Clearly, we know now that Jalen Hurts was concussed probably or something in that game from one of the hits he took. But, man, just chaos. And like you said, the defense, all the injuries, it added up clearly. It was interesting to me because the Lions started with the ball. And I was thinking to myself all weekend, like, hey, if I'm the Eagles here, or if there was an inevitable Lions-Eagles matchup, right, and you got the coin toss, if I'm the Lions, this would have been the NFC Championship game. This would have been what I said to you and Keenan. I would have said, hey, if I'm the Lions, I want that opening kickoff and make the Eagles play catch-up, right? Cool. Because, they're just not as an explosive team. They don't have the passing threat that, the Lions do. It would just been a tough matchup for them to play catch-up compared to the Lions playing catch-up to the Eagles. Lions started the game with the ball, which in this case, it doesn't really matter to me because the Commanders don't have a great defense. They definitely have a serviceable defense, but I think we all expected some sort of track meet. But then the Lions go 3-and-out, I think, to begin the game. And the air doesn't get taken out of the building or anything, but it was pretty noteworthy where it's like, damn, it seems like the Commanders can at least hang with them. And like you said, as we saw the whole game, the Lions defense just wasn't up to the task. And then on top of that, like we had all predicted, I mean, the fourth downs was just insane. They were putting pressure I've never seen anybody put on another team, to be honest. It seemed like every fourth and short, they just had the Lions at their mercy. To the point, again, where I thought we were going to see that out of both the Ravens and the Bills in yesterday's game, given the running attack that they have, whether it's the running quarterback or both of their halfbacks too, just the dual threats they have. I thought we would have seen a similar game plan that the Commanders did. But the Commanders were truly playing with house money. Obviously, Jaden Daniels played great. But, man, the Lions fell apart, bro. I mean, I think they're down 10 when that Jamison Williams play is called. The second one, not the touchdown.
It was only 7, I believe. The pick or the touchdown?
Yeah, the pick.
I believe they were down 28-21. So it was like in it.
No need for that call. No need. Nope. If anything, call the same end around again. And, if you get stopped, you get stopped. But, man, why are we putting the ball in Jamison Williams' hands to throw a key pass?
Why did he throw it? Like,
yeah,
throw it away, put it in the dirt, run it for half a yard? Yeah, exactly. You're going to try to fit into a tight – you have a glove on your hand. You're not going to be accurate. You're not even a quarterback. He's not open. There's like safety over the top. They're like, what are you thinking? That is like brain dead play from him.
Speaking of brain dead, and speaking of Jamison Williams, my other favorite part of this weekend was after Jamison Williams scored on the end around, like when he took it to the house, he then dry humps the ground. But better than that, once he gets to his second pump, his teammates just rush over and push him over. And everyone's like, how much of a fucking loose cannon do you have to be to where your teammates' reaction when you're celebrating it's just to like push you off and get like just try to prevent a penalty? Like, so Jameson Williams is insane. If we didn't already know that from his suspensions and the throw that we got later on, I mean, yeah, that was the full Jameson Williams experience in a nutshell. But segueing off that, insane call by Ben Johnson. Like, someone made a good point. I forget who I was listening to this weekend, but these coaches, these coordinators who become coaches, right? They get hired in the offseason. They often are leaving one of their worst performances. Usually. They're usually not coming off Super Bowls. Sometimes they are, for sure. But a lot of the times, if they're losing in the playoffs or they're on a contending team like the Lions, you're usually leaving one of your worst performances. And in this case, I don't know if it was a terrible performance by Ben Johnson. Obviously, that call was god-awful, all-time awful. I don't know why you're putting the ball in Jameson Williams to throw it there. But that's what we're going to remember when allegedly he is being introduced as the Bears head coach. That's what's going to happen next week, which that's super interesting in general with him being right in division. That's going to be a cool subplot going into the 2025 season. But it's true, though. I mean, you really are coming off, if not your worst game, some of your worst games, but your worst moments here. It's going to be super interesting given how highly touted that Ben Johnson was. But overall, this game, man, I mean, like you said, the Commanders came to play. They did not look overmatched. They did not look scared. They did not look nervous. They didn't look any of that. They looked like they more than belonged on the same field as the Lions. Very interested how it'll go with the Eagles. That's going to be a tougher game to cap, especially being a third divisional game. We don't know what the weather will be. I was very much looking forward. Had the Ravens won, I would have been rooting for the Commanders. I wanted an all DMV Super Bowl. That would have been super dope. But ultimately, yeah, man, this was the Bills and the Ravens was the most dramatic game by far. This was the most insane game. As one of, I think the lead announcer said, the game was drunk. I mean, we say that all the time about your average week 4 game that chaotic, your average week 12 game that gets chaotic at the end. You don't really see that in playoff games, how out of hand this got, especially in the second and third quarter. So crazy entertaining game. I do feel bad for the Lions and their fans. Same question, though, about the Ravens. How do you feel about them going into the offseason, coming back into next season? Do you think they're still a contender? Do you think it'll be tough given how their division looked? I mean, that's still, even how the Bears played, that's still 3 tough teams to face, for 6 games. How do you feel about the Detroit Lions?
I'm definitely a little worried. I think it's mainly the Ben Johnson leaving. You're going to lose a great offensive mind. It's going to be hard to replace him no matter what.
Possibly Aaron Glenn, too.
Exactly. He might be as well taking a head coaching job. So we'll have to see. I will have more info in probably like a week or two when, these guys are hired. But I was thinking that earlier today. I was like, he said at the end of last year, it's going to be so tough to get back to this moment. It's going to be even tougher now, man. You're coming into like a loaded division now with a target on your back. You were that 15-win 1 seed. Like it's, I don't think 15 wins is in the cards next year. I mean, they should definitely be competing for the division title next year, but it'll probably regress back down to that normal 12 wins or something like that. So, hopefully they don't fall off like the 49ers did. I mean, it totally could happen to where they just get injured again and they can't hold out the way they did this year. Like they can't make it all the way. So I'm definitely a little worried about it, 100%. So that was something that came to my mind earlier today.
I think I feel both ways about it. I think I'm worried, but I'm also like, hey, if you would have told us in week 13 that this happened, we probably all would have said like, if the injuries keep going, like, yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? I think it's more like we had to see it to believe it, because especially with how it happened, especially with how they imploded. That's the thing. Like, throwing interceptions he hadn't thrown all year. Jameson Williams call, obviously, that we've been talking about. It's more how they lost, right? Because I just got done saying, hey, this team hasn't won anything yet, and they more than carry themselves like a championship team. And they didn't really do that the other night. Again, we can maybe say Goff was concussed, sure, but still seemed like a little bit of an implosion. I've seen worse implosions for sure, so I don't want I think they're still going to be a playoff team. But when you got Green Bay in that division, we don't know what the Vikings are going to look like. And we definitely don't know what the Bills are going to look like now. Or sorry, the Bears are going to look like with Ben Johnson. But, if you just want to go across the conference, like I'll tell you right now, I think San Francisco is going to be a playoff team, right? Barring more injuries again. The Rams obviously are going to have something to say. The Eagles aren't going anywhere. Cowboys are still going to be super talented. Like there's going to be a lot of teams who, maybe the Lions are still a 12-win team. Maybe they are still vying for the division with the Packers or whoever. But those secondary teams, they're going to be a lot tougher next year, I believe. And this year, even with those defensive injuries, it seemed like it was built to where, okay, you're at least going to for sure be in the NFC Championship game, and then we'll talk after that. They didn't even make it there. So tough pill to swallow, tough loss. And again, like you said, they might be without Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. We saw how that treated the Eagles last year coming off their Super Bowl berth, losing both of their coordinators. So I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing, like you said. Which game do you want to talk about now? You want to go Eagles-Rams or you want to go Chiefs-Texans?
First of all, I want to go Rams-Eagles.
Okay.
And I just want to give some praise to Jahmyr Gibbs. He was a big bright spot in this game.
He's a baller.
At one point, he had 9 carries for 96 yards. He was just taking them. So super bright spot. The first drive the Lions got in the second half, they go down, they score a touchdown. That's when they started really reaching into the bag of tricks. We saw that weird shovel pass from Gibbs to Amon-Ra. That was amazing.
Let me just say on that was an incredible play call. That was
incredible. Never see it before.
That was unreal.
And we see that lead to other, big plays. They go right down there. And then the touchdown run from Jahmyr Gibbs, it honestly blew me away because if you look at it, you can see the seam. You can see the line that he's supposed to run for this touchdown. But there's 5 bodies that can make a tackle on him. He said, I'm faster than 3 of you, and I'm going to run one of you over. So he just gets there, and it was just amazing to see. So that's my praise for Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously an amazing football player. Could be the RB1 next year. We will see. But we can go into Rams-Eagles. With this game, I was upset the way I picked it after I learned that it was probably going to be a snow game. If it's a snow game in Philly, you got to lean East Coast team that's good in the snow. That isn't quite how the game went. Like, they definitely were up a good margin at one point, but I really didn't think that there was ever a moment that they were out of the game just because it's the Eagles and I'm still not convinced that, they're good enough. So I wasn't super happy with how Hurts played, but like you said, he did get hurt at one point. I believe he hurt his knee, and that might be why they gave him a perk. But from that point on, it was just kind of sluggish from Hurts, and then it was all Saquon. He took, play to the house. He was breaking other big plays. I wasn't exactly disappointed in the way they played Saquon up until that touchdown run because, when he runs for 200 and something on you the first time, if you can hold him to 100, that's a success. So They played pretty well, and then it kind of just got out of hand at the end. And then they go down and they have a chance to win it. And I don't agree with the throw from Matt Stafford at the end there. Just, miscue. He just threw it a little bit too wide. It wasn't even catchable for, I think it was Puka that he was targeting on that. So that was kind of disappointing. But the Rams defense, man, they surprised me. They were getting after the quarterback. They had, 6 sacks in this game? They were pressuring the whole time. So I was really worried when Hurts got hurt. I was like, if Kenny Pickett comes in, that's over. This defense will tear him apart.
Yeah.
So praise to the defense. Wasn't enough to get it done. I think I'm less confident in the Eagles winning after watching them play the Rams than before the weekend, to be honest with you.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So if you would have asked me, and you can kind of see this in my picks, if you saw on our page what we picked, or if you watched our episode, I think I picked the Lions by margin, but in this game I picked the Eagles by 2 touchdowns, and felt that way the entire day. I just didn't think the Rams could match up with them. We saw them play within the last 6 to 8 weeks. We watched them play.
Prime time, yeah.
Prime time. The Eagles ran all over them. They were too physical for the Rams, and I really didn't see much. And again, this is on good surfaces. This is if you're telling me it's 40 degrees, not much snow, whatever, right? That's how I'm picking the game. Then, like you said, you hit the group chat about the snowstorm that's coming in. I'm like, oh, it's a wrap. Like, I'm feeling even more confident. And for the most part, the Rams seemed up to the task, but it did seem like the Eagles had the upper hand. Saquon breaks it, and it's damn near the score I picked. Like, Eagles are up, I think 28-13 or 15 at that point. And then before you know it, Stafford and them are down the field. And before you know it, they score. And before you know it, they get a stop and they got the ball back and they're driving into the red zone. And you're like, oh shit, what's going on here? And let me just say, perfect precursor to the Bills and Ravens, because that game just got dramatic out of nowhere. Eagles Rams, because again, 8 minutes before that, it looked over, and I should have said this already. I mean, this is why you guys pick them, is the whole McVay, Stafford, Cooper Cup, and Kyron Williams. Like, that's why you pick them. They got the pedigree. They've already won a ring, but they earned my utmost respect in that game, because, yeah, you can say all that, but the history of a West Coast team going to the East Coast, and especially in adverse weather, it never ends well. And they were there to the bitter end. Their defense showed up. You do not see that out of a West Coast team. If there's two teams you'd pick it from, it would be this team, this McVay-led Rams team, and the Harbaugh Niners teams of the past. They always showed up in the cold weather, right? Like, but that's it. Those are like the only two in my entire football watching memory that I could say could show up in cold weather and at least give you a game, if not win. So incredible heart by them. I came away thinking, okay, obviously Stafford still has it. I can't imagine Stafford playing 3 more years. Like, 2 max is what I see, right? And obviously they got Garoppolo, who's like the perfect type of backup you want. Someone who started before, can come in, maybe win you games, keep you in games, whatever. But makes you wonder, will they try to get a quarterback this year and develop for 2 years? It seems like you're in the perfect position to do that. Under the perfect type of coach. You got an offensive genius in McVay there. So I'm very interested in their offseason. And, I kind of went back and forth. And I think, if I remember correctly, you picked the Rams to win the division preseason.
I did. It was at 13 wins.
Yeah.
And then we had like nightmare football for the first month for them, but they did win.
Yeah. And, that I'm sure that was a big part of it, was Stafford and McVay, and Keenan always had Stafford high in his QB rankings. And I was always like, yeah, I get it. But like, man, this was my reason for picking against him. I just haven't seen the consistency of this team, but they showed up and they were more than game, and they completely won me over. Not that I was a Rams hater, not that I thought they were frauds. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't think they matched up well with the Eagles, but they completely won me over. And I'm super interested to see how they build, because they have such good young pieces on their defense. They completely turned that defense around already. Cup might look, I don't want to say washed, but he looks for sure past his prime. He didn't produce much down the stretch the way Pook did. So I'm really interested. Like, how do they, now that you're for sure in a good position, now that you got another healthy season out of Stafford, because last season was not healthy, what does next season look like? The NFC West is pretty talented already, whether it's the Seahawks, whether it's the Cardinals, whether it's the Niners. No, you might not. You might only have to worry about the Niners really and what goes on in Arizona and Seattle. But those are, much like the NFC North, those are 6 tough games you have to play. So I'm very interested to see how they attack it. And they completely won me over. Terrible weather. That went from cold weather to a blizzard real quick, and they more than handled it. Eagles Commanders, though. You said you feel like the last 2 weeks, you said the exact same thing. You said you feel less and less confident in the Eagles. I don't know if I feel that way. They're so well-rounded. Their weak spot to me is QB, which we've had this discussion all throughout the year. But they do so well at not only playing defense. Obviously, you're going to have home field. We don't know the weather yet. But whether it's just playing tough defense or just being able to run the ball and complete easy passes, like just keeping it simple and draining the clock, they do so well at that. And they'll obviously be able to present more problems for Jaden Daniels than the Lions did. But, I mean, the Commanders have always played them well. And then now you got a red-hot quarterback who's just unafraid completely. And let's be honest, has way more ability than Jalen Hurts, right? Like, he can throw downfield. He can do the whole rushing thing. And then on top of that, like, dissect you in the pocket. So he's going to be a load to deal with. both of their matchups, I believe, especially the second matchup that involved Kenny Pickett. But I think the first matchup was pretty close, if I remember correctly. Could have been way earlier in the year. I don't know, but um, I'm actually looking forward to that game more than Chiefs Bills, surprisingly. Uh, any final thoughts before we move on to the Chiefs and Texans?
I think the first time Eagles Commanders played, it was like a 2-score game, but Jaden Daniels was coming off a rib injury the prior week, so he wasn't fully 100% there. And this was before we really started seeing electric Jaden Daniels. This was just rookie QB, always playing really well, Jaden Daniels. He wasn't, game-winning drive Jaden Daniels. So I'm definitely very excited about this Eagles-Commanders game. It would be incredible to see Washington versus Buffalo in like the most cursed Super Bowl other than Lions versus Buffalo. That would just be crazy. Yeah.
I was praying on once it became a possibility, like I was all in on Ravens Commanders. I was all in on the all DMV Super Bowl. That being said, yeah. I don't even know what would be the best matchup, whether it's Commanders Bills. Notice I'm not even going to say the Chiefs here, whether it's Eagles Bills or Commanders Bills. I'm not sure which it is.
I think for me, I would prefer Bills Commanders. I think that's just
it's
interesting.
It's refreshing.
Yeah, exactly. We get two new teams, and we kind of get like two teams that haven't won a Super Bowl. The Commanders haven't won in a long time. I don't believe the Bills have one. So
yeah,
it's much more refreshing than three-peat versus somebody who just won one in 2018 or whenever they beat.
Funny enough, too, it's one of the matchups that the Bills lost in their 4 straight Super Bowl losses. One of them was to the Redskins back in the day. Now the Commanders. So, yeah, let's talk about what some would say the Chiefs and the refs versus the Texans. I mean, we've been talking about it all year. Let me get this out of the way because I know Keenan would say the same thing, and maybe me and Keenan have each alluded to it. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, Mahomes took the mantle from Brady and Belichick and how they had the refs. Listen, did we get some calls? Of course we did. But I have never, whether it was the Patriots, and I would tell you if it was the Patriots, if we truly benefited from like calls game after game after game, I would sit here and tell you that. I have no problem telling you that. I've never seen a team damn near in any sport, maybe LeBron era Lakers. Notice I'm not even saying Cavs or Heat, like specifically the Lakers with LeBron. They seem to get calls. Other than that, though, man, I've never seen a team blatantly get calls the way this Chiefs team does. I mean, we had before I let you go off, man, like I think we talked about it in the group chat yesterday. There was a play where it was near the sideline and he gets kind of shoved out, and it was a completely legal play. But it's hard for me not to look at any one of those plays, no matter what quarterback it is, and say, what if that was Patty Mahomes? Right? Like, it just seems like he gets the benefit of that call every single time. Any call, really, whether it's inside or outside the pocket. It just seems like the Chiefs get these calls. Just reminded me of a bad call in the Ravens game, but we can that defensive pass interference. That was another turning point in the Ravens game, but that's a complete sidebar. We'll go.
That made me so mad when it happened. I was like,
that seemed like a no call to me. And if
we get no call, we get no call for like 5 seconds, and then all of a sudden a flag comes flying in, and I'm like, okay, offensive pass interference. Like, it was pretty clear to me from that view. Keon Coleman just kind of threw him to the ground there at the end, kind of playing like neither of us are catching this ball type of football. And then one of the announcers came, he's like, oh, I think there's going to be defensive. And I'm like, it better not be, because there wasn't defensive pass interference. They might have been locked up. One guy ended up on the ground. The other guy could have made a play on the ball. It's not the way it is. So.
The worst part about that was Romo goes, oh, yeah, it's clear defensive pass interference. And right when he says that, like in unison when he says that, like it's Keon Coleman like this with the defender. I'm like, oh, yeah, that looks like clear defensive pass interference there when you got both arms extended by the receiver, like. And
then the other, I'm not sure who the other is. Was it Joe Buck? Is the other one on that call? Tony and
Jim Nantz.
Jim Nantz. He was like, I think you just got to let him play. And then they even brought in the expert from New York, said the exact same thing. He's like, I don't see enough to call anything here. That was kind of like a game changer. That's kind of what set them up for that.
It led to a score, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because I was damn near in the red zone when that call happened. you mentioned Jim Nance. You mentioned Joe Buck, actually, right there. And, funny enough, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, which is why now America loves Troy Aikman, because, man, these last 4 years, I would say, man, he just doesn't hold back on quarterbacks, doesn't hold back on refs. And he spoke for America. He's been speaking on what you, Keenan, and I have all been talking about this entire season. If we talked about it last season, it's been especially apparent this season. Again, the calls the Chiefs get. And I've never heard an announcer call it out quite like Troy Aikman did. And Joe Buck echoed it. Like, they were not afraid of, whatever repercussions might come from the NFL if they get a stern talking to from Roger Goodell postseason or going into this week. Like, they were calling it how we've all been seeing it. And again, I'll reiterate before I let you go again, I cannot think of a sports team in my memory that, aside from LeBron, with the Lakers specifically, that gets these type of calls. Yeah, Mahomes and the Chiefs just get them all the time. What'd you think of this game? What'd you think about the calls? What'd you think about all this?
So when this game started, I kind of hate that they kind of stagger these games. If there's a way that they can make all these games primetime games, they got to do it. Because I was driving back from a track meet, and I'm just trying to pull the game up and drive at the same time. So like,
you're saying that they should go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday?
I could see Saturday, Sunday, Monday all being primetime games. I mean, they just gave us the Rams game on Monday. It does kind of mess up your rest and everything like that. But eventually it gets down to 2 teams, so you should be able to give them a week off no matter what. Just put that last team potentially on the Monday or whatever. I don't care.
We'll put the call
They can figure it out.
We'll put the call on. We'll be like, Tim's driving truck. Like, at this time, like, can you please make the games at this time for us?
Just slide it back 6 hours, postpone that other game. We'll be fine. We'll figure it out. It's not like they're not going to watch the game. They're going to watch at whatever time you put it on.
Put the call on midnight. We'll watch.
100%. They would get the same viewers. Like,
they really would. They really would. You ain't lying.
It was very refreshing to hear Troy Aikman be like, "That's a terrible call." Like, if anything, they should have thrown the penalty on the defense for hitting their own defensive player in the head, because they just collided head to head there. If they really cared about safety, they would throw the penalty anytime we get a head to head, not just because it's the quarterback. It was crazy. Another thing that really made me mad was like the Mahomes flop out of bounds. Mm-hmm. Like, he's like right on the edge, and he clearly flops. He like extends forward to jump forward. Like, what do you like? It's bad that we've tailored the NFL to where that would have gotten him a penalty in prior years or even prior games this season. That's like a really risky thing to be like, oh, they're going to protect me so much that if I just flop right here, they'll give me a 15-yard penalty. Which also kind of makes me say, I think we should get rid of automatic first down penalties. I think if the yardage gives you a first down, sure. But
all
like
across the board?
Like on a lot of them, yes. Because like there's a lot that don't warrant a first down. Why do you get a new set of downs because like you hit the quarterback a little late or anything like that?
What say you about a 5-yard penalty automatic first down? Kind of like an illegal touching.
See, that's what I don't like is the automatic first downs when you don't get enough yards to get the first down. Like if the 5 yards, if it was 2nd and 3 and the 5 yards would give you the first, sure.
So but if it's just the yardage in general, almost like it's a completion. So like if you're at, let's say you're at 2nd and 15 and the penalty happens 10 yards, like just give it a 3rd and 5 or even a 2nd and 5, keep the down.
There you go. Keep the down, give them the yards, 2nd and 5.
Okay.
That to me makes sense because I don't think you should be bailed out. Like there's a scenario where you're 3rd and 27, but because we get a late hit on the quarterback, it's all of a sudden first down and they get a whole new set of downs because of it. Sure, take away that one down and give them some yards. It's just like it changes games. It really does when they're like, not only is it a bailout because we're giving you a penalty that's going to give you yardage, but you're just going to get a new set of downs. You get to restart. Like, I think that's a slippery slope to where, we've seen it time and time again. Like they get bailed out. And I think there's this narrative that's being pushed right now I see it on Instagram now. They're like, oh, the Chiefs are actually one of the most penalized teams in the National Football League. I'm not arguing that the Chiefs are not penalized. I'm arguing that the penalties that benefit the Chiefs are much bigger than any other team. The penalties that benefit Mahomes are bigger than any other quarterback. We saw every single quarterback this weekend get hit out of bounds. That could have been a flag if it was Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
And none of them were thrown. Not a single one. So,
first of all, I want to reply to the penalties because I see the vision. I've actually definitely when I'm watching games when, like we said, like if it's illegal touching where it's 5 yards and an automatic first down, it does kind of take the sails out of the game. And you're right, it changes the game. And I've never actually thought about it in terms of like what you said. What if you just do spot fouls, right? Keep the down, but spot fouls. That does make it fair on all levels because you're penalizing the defense ultimately, right? And it's really the same as a holding penalty on offense. Like I guess the equivalent to that would be if the equivalent to what the defense gets punished would be if a holding penalty was the same 10 yards, but also a loss of down, right? So instead of 1st and 20 on a 1st and 10 hold, you get a 2nd and 20. That's what would make the most sense. I've never thought of that, but that does seem fair to everybody, and it doesn't seem like it's ever been really brought up. So I'm super intrigued by that because I think that how could you really argue it? You know what I mean? Like aside from passive interference, which is downfield, how could you argue like a holding 5 yards? Okay, 5 yards you get, but you don't get the automatic first down. You just get the yardage.
Exactly. When the defense commits a foul like that, they get penalized twice, not once, twice. They lose yards and it's a new set of downs. When an offense makes a penalty like that, they lose the down or they lose the yards.
You lose yardage. Yeah.
So it's not a double negative for the offense. It's only double negatives for the defense. If they want to make it a double negative, you held, and that's why you didn't get it. Take the yards and lose it down. Then we're even, I guess. I don't want to see either of those things happen, though. I'd rather you just be, all right, this is a 10-yard penalty, but this was 2nd and 27. We're not just giving you a first down because of it. Go get the 17 yards to get the first down.
I like that. I really like that. I've never even considered that, but that makes a ton of sense. That really does. I almost want to do more research on that and see if anybody's ever brought that to the attention because I've never even heard that discussed in NFL conversation, NFL circles, anything like that. I do want to say while we're talking about rule changes, this is just a little, and I wish Keenan was here for this conversation, just a little look into the future for the offseason. I did see something about this past July was the first time that they had serious discussions about the 18-game season. So if that's the case, we very well could go into the 2025 season. I don't expect this, but we could go into the 2025 season with an 18-game schedule. Now, if that's true that, the first time they really had serious discussions where they got down the line with an 18-game schedule, my understanding is Goodell at that point was not talking about the second bye week, which everyone said would be key if they do have an 18-game schedule. My guess is maybe this would happen for 2026. That's just looking into the crystal ball here. But it does seem like as soon as 2025, I don't think that would be the case, but we've seen weirder things like this kickoff that just all of a sudden got installed that we fucking don't need. I cannot stand it. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But, maybe we get an 18-game schedule in 25. That would be insane. Moving back to the Chiefs-Texans game, you just said it, man. Not only is it these calls that the Chiefs would get, it's just extra help for them they didn't need. And that's where I draw the hats. And really any team you can think of across professional sports, the Chiefs don't need help to win. They're already smart enough. We talk about how they don't have an explosive team or they don't have a team that's necessarily built around Mahomes right now the way you would under a franchise quarterback, right? That being said, there are where I will give them the Patriots respect or, where they are on the level with the Patriots of yesterday. They're incredibly smart. They don't beat themselves on defense, and they really don't beat themselves on offense. They take care of the ball. They try to take care of the ball. They, for not being explosive, they make use of their yards. They make use of the field. They at least try to get in field goal range. They're very smart with how they control the offense and how they approach defense. That's enough for them to win the games. They don't need the extra help from the refs. And I'm not saying that, out of their 15 wins, I'm not saying 12 of them were to the refs. You know what I mean? I would never say the refs gave them X, Y, and Z games. But you can point to one or two where you could say, hey, the refs did absolutely help here, right? And it just seems like, and you saw the reaction. I'm not saying the internet's always right, because we know more often than not, the internet's often wrong too. But all the shit we've been talking about all year, the internet and Troy Aikman and Joe Buck apparently are all in agreement, right? Like, they get calls. And now do they get calls? They get calls that, like you said, we saw Lamar, we saw Josh Allen, we saw Jared Goff, all three of them, Jalen Hurts, you name a quarterback. We saw them either take late hits, questionable hits, hits on the sideline, that Mahomes will just get the benefit of the doubt when he has a half foot out of bounds, or, if he goes down in the pocket after releasing the ball. Sick of seeing that, because they don't need the help. They're good enough to win without that help. I promise you, they didn't get those calls. Yeah, it might have been a closer game, but I think none of us think the Chiefs are actually losing to the Texans there. So it's just disappointing to see. And when it comes to this Bills-Chiefs game, you just hope that, we don't have to deal with any of that. We hope it doesn't get to the fourth quarter, much like the Bengals game 3 years ago, maybe, the AFC Championship game, where old boy gets called for the late hit on Mahomes. I don't think you're on with us at this point, but I killed that call. I hated that call just because, by the letter of the law, maybe he might have hit him late, but it was such a bang-bang play where Mahomes just barely steps out of bounds. How can you confidently make that call, right? And we see that call every week with every special back where he's going out of bounds, and right as he touches, or maybe he doesn't touch, he gets hit out violently. And sometimes they do get it, sometimes they don't. And it seems with Mahomes, it's like something like 85% of the time he does get that call. So I understand everyone's frustration. What did you think, moving on from just the refs and the Chiefs part of it, what did you think at least from the Texans' performance? What did you think from the Chiefs as well? What did you think about their just performance sans refs?
I wasn't necessarily disappointed with the Texans. I definitely put in the group chat later on, I don't remember which game it was. I think it was the Lions game, where I said I hate it when a QB is staring three blitzing linebackers in the face, yes, and he doesn't audible, he doesn't check, he doesn't do anything. He just says, "I'm running the play." Mm-hmm. That's kind of what CJ Stroud ended the game on, was all out pressure and no adjustments to be made. That's a play where Patrick Mahomes says, or at least has the chemistry with Travis Kelce to say, hey, you see those three linebackers that are no longer in their positions? Go stand right there, and we're going to get the first down. I hate seeing that, and I think we saw a good amount of that. The Texans don't have a great O-line, so the pressure was kind of there all game, but the drive to start the second half, very good drive. Mm-hmm. They march all the way down the field. They cut the lead to one score. They're right in this game, and then from that point on, they kind of just fizzled out. When the game was on the line, exactly what I just said, they see pressure and game over. We did see the equivalent, the first roughing the passer we saw on Mahomes. We saw like the identical play to CJ Stroud in that ending of the game there, where he dumps it off under pressure, takes 2 steps, and then gets pushed to the ground, and they don't do anything about it. So, I wasn't super disappointed. They outplayed them, like, offensively. They had more yards. They just didn't convert. Obviously, the two missed field goals or the missed extra point, like all of that led to not being in one-score game.
Let me give you a quick fun fact before we go on, Tim. All 4 teams that lost this weekend outgained their opponent. All 4.
Yep, and it's tough with the Texans because they outgained them, got to the red zone, and then didn't get any points out of it on multiple drives. And then not even that, like when they scored a touchdown, they couldn't even kick the extra point at one point. So if he makes those 2 field goals and that extra point, this is a completely different game. They're playing for the actual win. They're not playing for like, okay, now we can get an onside kick and go down and win it. They're playing for the W.
Sure.
So it all comes together to where, CJ Stroud, he's still a young QB. So maybe this is kind of like a building block. I was a little bit more impressed. I didn't think that they would play offensively that well after getting injured, quite like they did at the end. It was kind of just Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, and CJ Stroud versus the world there. So I'm a little bit happy with how they played, just not happy with how the scoring possessions turned out.
2 more questions for you before we go, Tim. One, do you feel better, worse, the same, looking objectively here, about the Kansas City Chiefs going into this game with the Bills? Do you feel like they have more an advantage against the Bills? Do you feel the same exact way you felt in week 1 about the Chiefs? How do you feel?
I think I'm definitely a little bit less confident in the Chiefs. Like normally, I would say it's Mahomes. He can win you any football game. Plus, they have a good defense.
Mm-hmm.
The defense hasn't looked quite as good as it did in these last 2 Super Bowls. So that worries me a little bit. They were still making plays, when they needed to. Like I said, at the end there, they were bringing pressure. They were getting to them. But I don't think that that's going to work against Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen's the exact guy that, makes that adjustment, and they get the first down and punish them for it. I think either way, I probably would have said I'm less confident just because this is the Bills or the Ravens. Like, it's going to be one of the best football teams in the league playing against the Chiefs. We always have that argument, especially with Lamar, we see this, but it's the exact same case with Josh Allen. This is their year to win a Super Bowl. If they don't do it this year, when are they going to do it?
That's the question. That's
the question every single year. It has to be this year. Like, it has to be. He has to exercise his demons this year.
I'm going to respond to that quickly before we go on. I almost think I said the same exact thing last year. Whether it was me, you, and Keenan, I feel like I said the same thing about the Bills last year. Yet here we are, AFC Championship game. And you know what? I actually don't feel that way about them, only because, they don't have a clear number 1 receiver. I remember when we were talking in preseason, I chose the Jets to win the AFC East over the Bills, right? The case I was giving out for the Bills was hey, what if Keon Coleman is the number 1? Obviously Allen's going to be Josh Allen. Yeah, he could rush the ball more, this or that, but ultimately, what if this is a really good offense? Which it has been, but it's been kind of in the vein of what Cam Newton was in his MVP season, right? Not saying that these receivers can't get open, but I mean, you don't even have a Zay Flowers on this team type of thing, but you do have good receivers. So that's where I do have more confidence, because this defense did get weaker just as of this last week, just the injuries they had yesterday's game. But, there's not a lot to love on that offense. They're more of a ground and pound type of offense, really, if you just got to the nuts and bolts of it. So I do think there's more room to grow here. I'm weirdly more confident down the line. Now you kind of got to use the thing with the Bills that you do with the Lions. When you're a cursed team like that, it does seem like your window in general is just this short amount of time, which is why I'm a little worried about the Lions, and again, with the coordinators. But as far as the Bills go, I got a little more optimism because they can grow, especially from the receiver position. And it seems like by default you will. There's a ton of talent coming in from college at the receiver position. And their defense even seems like they can still build on that. So it does seem, though, let's say they don't get to the Super Bowl this year, maybe it would take 2 or 3 years before they really bounce back type of thing. Not that they'd be out of the playoff picture, but, we saw with the NFC. This was an incredibly tough NFC where your wild card's a 10, 11 win team. Maybe the AFC's that next year. You know what I mean? So I see where you're going with it for sure. Let me ask you this. Did you have more? Did you have more before I cut you off and responded?
No, but when you were just talking about that, I was just thinking, especially wide receiver draft with the people coming out of college this year. The Bills traded back with the Chiefs. They gave up their pick
for the
Chiefs.
Pick.
Yeah, for the Chiefs to take their number 1 wide receiver so that the Bills could trade back all the way. Eventually, they traded all the way back into the second round there with the first pick to take Keon Coleman, which is just very questionable because that might be, what breaks them tomorrow or this weekend. What if it's Worthy going for 6 catches, 120 yards and a touchdown? That would be terrible to see, Also with the Bills is we see them draft a wide receiver, so they're already committing themselves to saying, hey, we don't have a wide receiver room that we're super comfortable with to win a Super Bowl this year. And then they trade for Amari Cooper later on in the season. Where's he been? He's just been absent from every game.
It seems like he showed up that first week, and then after that, it's been nothing.
It was the first week or the second week that he was there. He did good. First week he had a touchdown. I remember that because Keon Coleman had to tell him the play call on the line of scrimmage. Scores a touchdown. I believe a week or 2 later has a great game. And then the lateral to Josh Allen for the touchdown against the 49ers, we
Yep.
haven't heard a thing about him since
Straight
then.
up. And he's been injured between now and then. Like, I know
Yep.
he missed a couple games, but in general, yeah, it's been crickets. It's been crickets. And I know the Chiefs were the other team that was really in on him. Like, it seems like it was Bills or Chiefs at the deadline for Amari. So you do wonder. I mean, it doesn't happen this way, but you do wonder maybe if he re-breaks out. Because he, honestly, on the Browns, it did seem like he was just one of those receivers that, you know, maybe it's not enticing, maybe it's not sexy, but he always gets the job done. He's always open type of thing. And you expected that with the Bills. And again, week 1 with the Bills, it seemed like that. But since then, yeah, it's been cricket. It's been crickets. Last question, though, before we sign off. Warner Brothas Podcast, we love and we thrive off bold predictions that we half believe here. Give me a bold prediction about this weekend that does not give spoiler alert for your pick. So just a broad between these two games, something that might happen, might not happen. Just give me a broad, bold predictions. More than one if you have it too, by the way. It doesn't have to be restricted to one.
I want to give one for each.
Okay. I like it.
I don't want to spoil a pick, but
Okay.
I think my prediction for the Chiefs to have a touchdownless game could happen. It wouldn't surprise me if their offense doesn't score a touchdown.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily mean they lose.
And that's going off your pre-postseason. That was one of your 5 bold predictions. You might even have 6, actually. Okay.
Yep. So I could see that. Like, even last week, they did end up scoring 2 touchdowns, but the offense didn't look quite like a touchdown scoring machine. Definitely didn't give me the confidence to play against the Bills. That's tough because, I mean, their defense can score a touchdown. They can get their field goals. I could see that being a slugfest where they just play defense and they, you know, both teams play defense and we get like a 17-14 game or something like that, which isn't out of the realm of possibilities for all field goals. So,
Right.
Man, that's tough because.
So wait. So, okay. All right. You're saying Chiefs all field goals, but you didn't want to spoil. I was going to say, you're going to go a game where it's only field goals? Like we get field goals on both sides? That would be quite the bold prediction.
That would be a crazy game. That would need to be just like, do you remember who did the Patriots play? It might have been Patriots Bills like 2 years ago, where it was just like 70-mile-an-hour winds and freezing cold.
That was Mac Jones' rookie season, yeah.
Yeah. Bill Belichick was like, I'm going to throw the ball 2 times in this football game, and they won because of it. Like, I could see that if we get a terrible weather. Yeah.
I was terrible.
If we get like a super snowstorm in Kansas City and it's just like a run fest, I could see a 12-6 game that's just super disappointing to watch.
Okay. That would be interesting.
There you go.
To say the least.
Give me that. Give me under 20 points in the Bills.
I love it.
Chiefs game.
That's a great one. Under 20 is an insane bold prediction.
Give me that.
I love it. All right.
And then in the other one, give me Jaden Daniels goes for 500 total yards. I don't want to. That's not necessarily giving it away. We've seen it. We've seen Brady go for 500 and lose a Super Bowl before. So,
who was it just this past weekend? Someone just this past weekend threw for mad yards and still lost. Was it Goff? Maybe.
I think it was Goff. They had like 400 yards of offense or something like that. I don't know if it was 400.
I think it might have even been 500 because I remember when they read the stat, I was thinking like, oh, that's up there with when Brady threw for 500. So it might have been that Lions game. It would make sense if it was actually. I'm going to give you one bold prediction. If I can get a second in here, I'll think of it. I'm not proud of this bold prediction that I'm about to make, by the way. We just talk about how maybe, Jared Goff may or may not have been concussed, but that we're not going to use that as an excuse. Just like we're not going to use, and I hope Ravens fans don't use this as an excuse that they did not have Zay Flowers, right? You got who you got, and you got to deal with it, right? So it brings me no joy to say this, but this is my bold prediction. We are going to come in here on Monday or whenever me, you, and Keenan talk next week about these championship weekend games. And there's going to be a injury. Don't want to put this out in the universe, but bold prediction will be there's an injury that's going to be like, you can't move past it. Like it definitely had it similar to Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship game a couple years ago where he gets injured on the first drive. I think we're going to have an injury of that magnitude whether it's a quarterback, receiver, running back, a very important player where you can say, damn, if we had that player, maybe we don't win the game, but we're definitely in the game. I'm hoping against hope that that does not fucking happen. I don't even know why I'm putting this in the universe, but that's what I felt, and that's my bold prediction. I hope it's so bold that it just does not happen. The football gods would just not do that to us. So that's my one. I don't think I can give you – it's hard to be under 20 points, especially when you give it Bills Chiefs. Like, that's one of the best bold predictions I've ever heard, possibly. Camden Dennis proud of that type of bold prediction, by the way. He's known for his bold takes, too. If I could give you a second, though, to match it. Shit, let me see. Okay, here's a good one. With this weird weather we've been having, because, I mean, as you know, it's hella cold here right now. I think it's like 10 below here. And it's like that across the U.S., really from the central part of the U.S. over. Like south, east, it's hella cold all over. One of these games, maybe even both of these games, but one of these games will be postponed and having to be played Monday or Tuesday. How about that? There's a bold prediction for you. That's better than the injury one. So that's my two. I hope the injury one is not true at all. If there was a way for me to redact it, maybe I'll have Keenan edit it out when he goes through the show. Like, you heard it, but it's censored from the broadcast. So maybe we'll just have it edited out, because I definitely do not want that to come true. But yeah, there you have it. Two bold predictions from myself and Tim. Tim, this is a lot of fun. We will be back in a couple of days giving our predictions for this weekend. Might even have a fourth guest on. We'll talk about that more before we get there. But I can't wait for these games. This was not the weekend I was expecting. I was not expecting an all NFC East, NFC Championship game. I was obviously expecting Ravens Chiefs more than I was Bills Chiefs. But hey, I will sign up for that. What is this, part 4 now of that matchup? 3 or 4? I'll sign up for that any day of the week. And us and America, needless to say, and this is me coming from my favorite team being in the AFC East, we will all be rooting for the Bills. So I was shamelessly talking about that. Whether I pick the Bills or not, I will be rooting for the Bills. Listen, this was the Warner Brothas Podcast. Check us out on YouTube. I guess not TikTok. How does that work? I'm not on TikTok. I saw that was banned. We're back.
No, we're back.
Right?
It went dark for 12 hours, and then they were like, now we're good.
That's right. And I saw something about Trump like granting like what, like a 30-day period or a 2-week period. Maybe
he said he was going to give a 90-day extension, but they were back on before he was inaugurated. So I don't know quite how that works. I think what he basically told them was, hey, if you get anything, we'll take it care of. So.
We'll take it. So listen, for the next 90 days, you will be able to check out, at least for the next 90 days, you'll be able to check out the Warner Brothas Podcast, check out mine, Keenan's, Tim's, bold predictions on there. So TikTok for 90 days, YouTube, Instagram. I think we're still over on the Facebook, on the Meta, whatever you want to call that, in Boomerland. We're over there too. So check us out on all platforms. Check us out on Spotify. We got the YouTube shorts, and obviously we got the forgot Apple Podcast. Shout them out. They don't get a good shout out by us on here. Check us out on all platforms. Tim and I will be back. Keen will be joining us either Wednesday or Thursday. We will be talking about these games, predicting these games, and I cannot wait. Sadly, football season is almost over, but hey, we got 2 more weekends. We're out of here, though. Peace.